Today I am going to talk to you about a supernatural horror movie called No Sin Unpunished. Our protagonist, Taryn Melwood, is a young American woman in her early 30s, with short auburn hair. Taryn is a cynical woman who has experienced her fair share of darkness in life, and this darkness plays a key part of Taryn's story. Stay tuned for this unique paranormal story of revenge. The movie begins at the end of a slasher horror movie that Taryn has gone to watch with her best friend Megan at the local drive-in theater. Megan and Taryn have been friends since they were children and work together at the local diner called Carol's Cafe in a small Southern American town. After the drive-in movie is over, they head straight to work because Taryn is late for her shift. Most disturbingly, an older man in a baseball cap is sitting in a pickup truck watching Taryn. For the last 3 weeks, a young man named Hero has been coming to the cafe. From her previous chats, Taryn knows he is looking for the site of an ancient city that he believes is in her town. She also learns he has epilepsy and sometimes gets taken over by psychic visions during a seizure, and he follows these visions. Taryn is fascinated by Hero, and it is obvious that she is attracted to him. A local that Taryn knows asks for coffee and gets to talking to Taryn. Taryn rejects his sexual proposition, and he is jealous of Hero, asking a lot of questions about him. Meanwhile, the strange man in the pickup truck is watching Taryn's every interaction with the male patron. Taryn leaves the patron and returns to chat to Hero, and unwittingly burns his arm as she goes to pour him a coffee, which sends him into an epileptic fit. During the fit, he sees Taryn with her throat cut, he sees rain, and a man's hand holding a knife. He gets taken to hospital. Taryn rings up the hospital from work to check up on Hero, but is surprised to hear he has already been discharged. Taryn is so worried and feels so guilty for triggering his seizure. Taryn's manager shows her Hero's sheet of paper he found on the floor, and it is a map of the drive-in theaters. This is a place that Hero has been led to through his visions and research. Taryn knows right away where he is and goes there to meet him. When Taryn arrives at the drive-thru, it is all locked up, and she calls his name but gets no response, but the man in the pickup truck pulls up a few meters away from her car. There is something eerie about this man. Taryn continues to call for Hero and gets a fright when suddenly he appears. Hero tells her she shouldn't be there. Out of nowhere, the older man that has been stalking Taryn knocks Hero unconscious. The man is named John, and he is a sheriff and preacher in the town who is very familiar with Taryn and starts to question Taryn on her sexual activities. He puts his hand around her throat and backs her against the wall. He condemns her for being with so many men, and that Hero must be her newest. Taryn notices that John has a knife in his hand. In a desperate attempt to keep him talking and buying time so she can fight back, she tells John she is sick and that she needs John's help. Tragically, it does not work, and John swiftly stabs her in the neck, rupturing her carotid artery. Taryn chokes and bleeds out. John then puts the bloodied knife in Hero's hand as he lays unconscious and walks off. When Hero wakes up, he cradles Taryn in his arms in complete shock. Suddenly, a homeless man sees him and yells at him. Hero realizes what kind of trouble he is in and how the scene looks, so he runs away. The next morning, John interviews Megan after Taryn's body has been discovered, pretending like he has had nothing to do with brutally murdering her the night before. Megan is distraught and answers his questions. John pretends to care by bringing up the fact that he raised her as his daughter after her parents passed away in a car crash. He tries to get more information about Hero so he can pin the murder on him. Meanwhile, Hero manages to find a cabin to sleep in and then sneaks out just before the police pull up to look for him. John enters the cabin and calls for a search team and tracking dogs. Night falls, and Hero is still running through the woods. To his shock, a full apparition of Taryn appears. She tells Hero there is a bus called Jacob's bus that he can hide in, and she will distract the dogs. Hero is stunned, but does as she says. He comes across the bus, which has a bright light surrounding it. The doors open, and a cheerful bus driver greets him and tells him to hop on. Hero gets on, and Taryn soon arrives. Taryn explains to Hero that the bus is in between worlds, and Jacob will take him to a safe place, and that they must deal with John and send him to the hell he deserves. If they don't, Taryn is going to be stuck in the in-between world forever. Taryn explains to Hero that John was afraid she would expose him for abusing her when she was 14 and several times after that. Taryn says she must leave, but that Hero is safe, and he will be kept hidden from the police. Taryn leaves to contact Megan to help Hero expose John's abuse. Taryn makes herself appear in the back of Megan's car, and Megan is in shock at first, but then listens attentively to Taryn as she asks her for a favor. Jacob's bus drops Hero off at the precise place to meet Megan as she drives into the parking lot. Hero knows straight away when he hops in Megan's car that she has seen Taryn too. Megan takes Hero to her brother's place. He is out of town, so she believes it is the safest place to be. Megan deals with the events by drinking alcohol, and Taryn materializes in the kitchen and living room and urges them both to help her bring John Stone down, otherwise she is going to be stuck forever. They want to help, but are not sure how. Taryn tells Megan that John has videos of the abuse. Hero is not sure how they would find them, and Taryn explains he has a locked filing cabinet in his office, and they are in there. They hatch a plan to break into his house while he is out, with Hero dressed up in Megan's brother's repairman uniform. John now lives alone with his mother, so even if he is seen, someone will think he is a repairman. As for the lock, it can be broken with a hammer and chisel. Meanwhile, John and his deputy discuss Hero being a prime suspect, but his deputy sheriff starts to become suspicious of John's adamant focus on Hiro, when Hiro does not fit the description of a violent criminal at all. While John is at work, Megan and Hiro go ahead with their plan to sneak Hiro into his house to find the photos and videos of Taran's abuse. Hiro wastes no time and goes straight to John's office and breaks open his filing cabinet with the hammer and chisel. He rummages through the files until he finds the CD with Taran's name on it, and instantly Hiro receives a disturbing vision of what's on the CD. After recovering from this, he is filled with courage to keep going and get out of the house as soon as he can. As John's office door opens behind him, he gets a fright when he turns around and comes face to face with John's mother Mary as Hiro talks to her. He realizes that she is blind, and she doesn't seem overly concerned by his presence, because John sends people home to collect things he has forgotten before. Mary asks Hiro to assist her with walking down the stairs, and then takes him to the kitchen for a drink. Meanwhile, outside, John sees Megan in her car and queries her on what she is doing. Megan thinks quickly and tells him her car battery went flat on the way to her brother's house, and John pops the hood and cleans the terminals on her car battery, lecturing her that she needs to get a new one. He then drives off towards his house. At John's house, Hiro desperately wants to get away before John comes home, but doesn't want to arouse suspicion from Mary, so he sits quietly at the kitchen table. Mary potters around the kitchen and then walks over to Hiro and aims a gun at his head, letting him know she knows he is not meant to be there and she is waiting for John to come home. John arrives in the driveway at the same time, and he hears a gunshot. When John rushes inside, his mother tells him Hiro has got away and run off out the back door. After John calls his fellow officers to search for him, he goes straight to his office and right away sees his filing cabinet is open. He looks for the disc of Taran, but it is missing. He then becomes panicked. Hiro successfully evades the officers searching for him, hides out until dark, and goes to Megan's brother's house again. He tries to call Megan, but she doesn't answer. Hiro can hear a strange noise out the front and opens the front door to see Jacob's bus return, and he gets on. Jacob tells him that Taran urgently needs to see him, and he will take him to where it all began. When Jacob drops him off, Taran appears before him and explains everything to him, that the connection between them started in the ancient city where they fell in love. Hiro starts to understand and lets her know he found the disc and knows what John did to her. Taran encourages him to call for Jacob if he needs him. He is an angel. She says she must go and leaves him. Back at Megan's brother's house, Megan arrives there and calls for Hiro. She hears some noises from upstairs, and when she gets up into one of the rooms, is shocked to see Taran's abuse playing out on the TV. John comes up behind her and chokes her until she passes out and throws her on the bed. He then snaps the CD in half, destroying the evidence, and approaches Megan with a knife. He kneels beside her, ready to murder her, but when he turns her face, Taran's face appears and talks to him, freaking him out. He runs out of the room, and Taran continues to call John's name. Hiro then comes back to the house and calls for Megan. He walks upstairs and finds Megan unconscious, so calls an ambulance and then hides in a nearby garden. He talks to Jacob, saying that Taran is going to be stuck forever. Jacob reassures him that her spirit has not left yet and that he knows what to do. Hiro is too scared to go out there, as the police will shoot him, but Jacob tells him that God looks on favorably to the righteous. Hiro goes to the hospital to check up on Megan, and Taran reassures him she is fine, but that he must get away quickly before security is alerted. A hospital staff member sees Hiro and calls security right away. He pushes past her and heads up the stairs. Taran appears to him again and tells him to go to the roof. Hiro is panicking, but listens to her. Hiro makes it out onto the roof, but two officers chase him out there. He is surrounded, and the deputy sheriff begs him to talk to her as he teeters near the edge of the roof. He tells the deputy that she wouldn't believe who the real culprit is anyway. She urges him to tell her, but he decides to jump in complete faith that Jacob will catch him. He is right and lands safely in the bus. Taran and Jacob make sure he stays safe and out of sight. Meanwhile, Taran's funeral takes place, and John has the audacity to attempt a eulogy. He only gets a few sentences out when he looks at Taran's body, and her eyes fly open, revealing only the whites of her eyes. He starts to cough and choke, unable to continue. After the funeral, they place her coffin in the hearse and drive to her burial site. Hiro follows along, and Taran has her own plan. The driver happens to look in his rear-view mirror and sees Taran in the back seat and becomes completely horrified, stops the car and gets out. Hiro takes over the driving of the hearse, and the police escort begins to chase him. John's driver is told to follow too. Hiro leads them all to the drive-in theater, and John angrily tells Hiro that he is in a lot of trouble. Hiro confronts him and tells John he knows that he killed her. John defensively says that she had to die, but Hiro tells him he knows the truth of what he did to Taran as a child. Hiro waits until all the funeral attendees arrive, and he grabs onto John's arm and, using a seizure, transfers the images of Taran's murder onto the big screen. Once John realizes the truth is out, he pulls out a knife to threaten Hiro and confesses what he did. He says Taran had to be ended and blurts out Bible scriptures to defend himself. The friends and family of Taran are disgusted, and the police turn on John and tell him to put down the knife. John's mother tells him there is room for forgiveness, but John quickly in his neck with the knife. Later, Hiro waits alone at the drive-through theater, and Taran appears to him happy and whole. She thanks him for what he has done and she kisses him for the last time before crossing over. Later that day, Hiro sits at Taran's grave with Megan, and they discuss looking for the ancient city. Hiro starts to feel happy and excited about it once again. They walk off together, leaving the cemetery behind them, happy that Taran is now resting in peace until they meet her again.